Look, man, you sadly mistaken if you think that Egyptians was the first modern civilization that basically fathered in the greatest movement for the African mind in any time, place, shape, or form. I'm sorry to tell you, you sadly mistaken. And in this lecture right here, we're gonna be telling you how you're sadly mistaken. How Egypt was not to the founding civilization that really excuse me brought forth the African mind and how we handle things and what we learn and what our daily activities were and what meant the most to us at certain points in our lives. You got to understand that Egypt was the last of those civilizations. We was at our apex. And to be honest, we pretty really wasn't at our apex when we was in Egypt, for the simple fact that there is still more today and in the future that we could have been learning and that we are learning as people of African descent. So you have to understand that the greatest time and the greatest people is right now. When I see my brothers and sisters out on the street, I look at them. They are the future. They are what makes us great. They are descendants of those Africans who first started to migrate out of Africa. You got to understand that millions of years this earth has been spinning here on this axis, revolving around the sun. There has been countless and countless and countless of people who have experienced things for the first time and documented it, who observed the stars, who observed the seasons, who observed other humans and observed the animals and observed the day-to-day lives of the African mind. And they migrated out to tell others. Now let me give this disclaimer. I'm not throwing shade at Israel. Excuse me. I'm not, I don't know why I said that, but I'm not throwing shade at Egypt. I'm not throwing shade at Egypt in no shape or form. I just want to inform you of the people who started Egypt, or the land you call Kemet. These are the people that migrated there from out of Central Africa and populated that area, which eventually led to them migrating up the Nile to form Upper and Lower Egypt. Now, like I said in my other video, was Egyptians just plain African? No, they wasn't. It was other cultures that was there with Egypt. But this side, I'm telling you about the African side of Egypt and how they came through their being and how they migrated outside of Central Africa. You get what I'm saying? So let's get down to the nitty gritty, because I already know that even though I just said all this shit, it's still gonna be some of you who still take offense and want to say some, oh, he's slandering Egypt shit. And you would never get past this little 4-minute mark and knock down this science with me and knock down this education with me to be able to further your mind so you can know other things besides Egypt. Because niggas is dumb. You stuck in one place. I was never just stuck on Egypt. I was stuck on Africa as a whole. All civilizations. You get what I'm saying? Now let's get down to this knowledge. Now, first and foremost, in order to be able to give you all the history that I really want to give you, this is not going to just be one part and then we end it like that. We're going to be delving into history upon history upon history, evidence upon evidence upon evidence that these scholars today ain't really bringing you. If you really want to know the true history of the Egyptians, you have to go before the Egyptians. You have to look for artifacts that's older than the Egyptian artifacts, namely of the people like the Sand Tribe. You got to go to Central Africa, to all of these places that validates that we were here probably millions of years. Now, in this slide that I'm about to show y'all, this is the exact same evidence right here, stating that we've been around and there's evidence of us being around for over 300,000 years. Now, in my preference, we've been around for millions of years. But just to get my point across to you, to let you know that it was people that founded the way for Egypt, we're going to go with these slides right here. First slide. A new archaeological find in Botswana shows that our ancestors in Africa engaged in ritual practices 70,000 years ago, 30,000 years earlier than the oldest finds in Europe. This sensational discovery strengthens Africa's position as the cradle of modern man. And that's going to be another lecture that I'm going to be bringing to you guys on how the cradle of civilization was Central Africa, that the Garden of Eve that everybody sit up here and search for is in Central Africa. It is in that rainforest that you see right there. If you take a look at Central Africa, you'll see that it's mainly populated by vegetation. All of the fruits and things that was growing there at that time, them people had easy access. They had easy access to the Zambia River and all of the other rivers that was around at that time for water source. They had plenty of vegetation to keep themselves well cool from the sun, fruits and vegetables to be grown. Everything was right there at their disposal, whether you want to believe that or not. Associate Press Professor Sheila Coulson from the University of Oslo can now show that modern humans, Homo sapiens, have performed advanced rituals in Africa for 70,000 years. She has, in other words, discovered mankind's oldest known ritual. From who? The archaeologist from the Department of Archaeology, Conservation and Historical Studies made the surprising discovery while she was studying in the origin of the Sand people, in cooperation with the University of Tromsø, Norway, and the University of Botswana. A group of the Sand live in the sparsely inhabited area of northwestern Botswana known as Gamiland. Now, if you know anything about the singing people, you know that they was very, very ritualistic people. These people live by the creed and by the code of their ancestors, and they dealt with nothing but the afterlife. They dealt in the spiritual realm through their whole entire life. So you know that's what these people basically base their findings off of, because of the shamans and the Sand tribes. They was out here doing their ritualistic practices throughout Central Africa. This is where the first thought of your ancestors being like how we will say with the Egyptians, how they thought of the ancestors as in Osiris, coming back and ruling the underworld, ruling the realm beyond this realm. This is where that concept came from. It came from Central Africa, from people revering and loving and practicing and always invoking their ancestors. Central to these rituals is an invisible energy, said by the sand to be found in almost all animals, but in great quantities in the eland. Sand shamans harness this supernatural energy in order to undertake the dangerous journeys of the world of spirits, where they must perform various tasks such as rainmaking, fighting off evil spirits, and curing the sick. This potent energy was to be found particularly in the eland's blood, fat, sweat, oral testimony from a man who painted with the sand people in the 19th century. If you know what an eland is, you'll know that it's a type of like a deer, like a sort of like a deer with antlers and stuff like that. But they did not eat this animal. This animal was revered to say to have an open gate. You see how some people would say cats have their eyes. You could see into the other world through their eyes. The shaman of the sand people believed this with this particular animal. Do you get what I'm saying? Now, when she went to that cage, that cave, Parso, when she went to that cave and she found all of these things relating to the sand people, and she did this off of the whim of searching for the sand people. She had no idea that she was going to find evidence that proved that early Africans was the inhabitants of the natural practice of worship and invoking. Archaeologists thought that this came from Europe thousands of years ago. But she found evidence that no, this didn't come from Europe. This came from Central Africa. Where was she studying all this one from? You have places like Botswana. You have other places, Namibia, Angola, Zimbabwe. You get what I'm saying? All of these civilizations is what the sand people at this point of time control. But ain't no telling where they was migrating from. But we gonna get to that later. Coulson made the discovery while searching for the artifacts from the Middle Stone Age. If you know anything about the Middle Stone Age, they call the Middle Stone Age from 10,000, I think 10,000, it could be 10 to 15,000 to 30,000 years before the current era that we are living in right now. Coulson made the discovery while searching for artifacts from the Middle Stone Age in the only hills present for hundreds of kilometers in any direction. This group of small peaks within the Kalahari Desert is known to the Sodilo Hills and is famous for having the largest concentration of rock paintings in the world. The more than 3,500 paintings, and some more than 1,500 years old, constitute an important piece of our history, man. And if you looking at this video, you know I'm down with the slides. So I know you're seeing all the slides. And this right here is a slide of the hills that they're talking about. Now, there's a place there, and the people referenced it as the Python Cave. Now, this cave right here is in Solideo Hills. Excuse me if I'm name butchering, but I gotta get this message out to you. Now, upon entering this cave, peep what this lady found. When Coulson entered the cave this summer with her 3 master students, it struck them that the mysterious rock resembled the head of a huge python. On the 6-meter long by 2-meter tall rock, they found 300 to 400 indentations that could only have been man-made. Now, if you're looking now, you'll see the slide for the beginning of the cave and other dwellings inside of it. Now, you could see the mouth and eyes of the snake. It looked like a real python. The play of the sunlight over the indentations gave them the appearance of a snake skin. At night, the firelight gave one the feeling that the snake was actually moving, said Sheila Coulson to the University of Oslo's research magazine Apollon. Now, if you don't know the history of the Python of Python Cave, the Sand people at that time said that the world was created by that the hill, was created by the snake, because the snake was dwelling throughout the entire Africa searching for water. Now, if you looking at this slide right now, you'll see exactly. I shouldn't even have to tell you. I want people to get in the comment section and tell me exactly what this right here looks. And at the end of the video, now make sure when you put the comment in that you time it at this point second, that point second, so I'll know. And let me know, because I'm gonna reveal it what it looks like to me towards the end of this video. So make sure that y'all like and comment and say exactly what this right here looks to you. And I know the slide is up right now so you can see it, and I'm giving you ample time to do it. So make sure that you do that. Now, all of the indications suggest that Sodilo has been known to mankind for almost 100,000 years as a very special place in the prehistoric landscape. This was before Egypt. This was before Sumeria. This was before all of the civilizations that was powerful at the time that we know Egypt to be powerful. This was before all of that. So if you're going to make an argument stating basically that, Egypt fathered everything, you better get to realize the grandfather of everything. Because Egypt wasn't the first African civilization by no means. It was plenty of other civilizations that was thriving at the time of Egypt. The only reason why Egypt is so brought out in a world view is because Egypt was found by the Greeks and the Romans, and they wrote about it. They wasn't going deep into Africa and getting to learn all the other tribes and civilizations that was there before Egypt. You think about Congo. Congo wasn't even discovered by the Portuguese to the year 1400. That means they wasn't even journeying into Central Africa at all. They was not going that far. They was picking and choosing from the outer. Wherever the water led them, where the water stopped, that's where they stopped, and they took over that land right there. They was not delving it into Central Africa. It was civilizations thriving at that time in Central Africa. This is before Egypt. Peep what she said. As if that were not enough, the stones that the spearheads were made from are not from Sodilo region, but must have been brought hundreds of kilometers away. The spearheads are better crafted and more colorful than other spearheads from the same time and area. Surprisingly enough, it was only the red spearheads that had been burned. We're not even going to get into that with the practices and stuff like that. I just want you to basically know what was going on before Egypt. Right here, we got a rock painting from people at that time showing you that, yeah, the artistic skill wasn't as great as Egypt, but this is where the concept comes from. You have to get to the concept and find the true meaning. It didn't just, excuse my dog, it just doesn't end with the beautiful structures that you have in Egypt. We got to get down to the nitty gritty, other ugly structures and things that was built over time to gain that perfection that it gained once we ended up in Egypt. Archaeologists believe that human civilization developed in Europe after our ancestors migrated from Africa. The theory was crushed by archaeologist Christopher Henshaw when he published his finds of traces from a Middle Stone Age dwelling in the Blombos Cave, Southern Cape, South Africa. Now, I know this is not Central Africa, but I want you to get a concept of something that I'm saying here. You get what I'm saying? I want you to just get the concept of what I'm saying here. In 2008, an Okri processing workshop consisting of 2 tool kits was uncovered in the 100,000-year-old levels at the Blombos Cave, South Africa. Analysis shows that a liquefied pigment-rich mixture was produced and stored in the shells of 2 Haliotis Midday, whatever it is, that the ochre bone charcoal grindstones and hammerstones also form a composite part of the toolkit. As both toolkits were left in situ, and as there are a few other archaeological remains in the same layer, it seems the site was used primarily as a workshop and was abandoned shortly after the pigment-rich compounds were made. Now, like I said, I know that this is not Central Africa, like I've been saying, but it's a reason to why I'm putting up these slides for y'all. Now, it was consistent of 2 toolkits, was uncovered in the 100,000-year-old levels at Blombos Cave, South Africa. What I want y'all to understand is these people at that point of time wasn't no dumb people. If you had a workshop that you was making paint out of, you knew the processes of forming colors with colors. You knew what elements at that point of time will preserve those colors in order for you to be able to do. This is science. This is the beginning of science and knowledge of how to do things. We were told at this point of time that these people were only hunters and gatherers. But you're making paint and you're making tools and you're creating art. This don't just sound like a hunter and gatherer to me. Now, if you see this slide right here, you see that this is the entrance to Blombos Cave. This is where Blombos Cave is located at, South Africa. This right here is a painting that was found and is known as the earliest civilization's painting by hand, and this dated to about 100,000 years old. Now, this is where we delve back into Central Africa. Now, if you looking at this slide right here, you'll see these are the different tools that they was using at that point of time. These is you have on your lower right, you have the breaking of the stone. You have at your top, you have the piece, the being able to chisel out the things that you want to be able to hunt and gather or whatever you doing with that tool at that point of time. You get what I'm saying? Now, hold on, let me go back. This slide right here is really going to be able to tell you exactly how things came to be. In 2002, the recovery of 2 finely engraved ochre pieces, both deriving from the Scilly Bay units, was reported in Science magazine. The surfaces of both pieces were intentionally modified by scraping and grinding, and the engraved pattern from the distinct crosshatch design in combination with parallel incised line. In 2009, 6 additional pieces of engraved ochre what this time recovered from the entire Middle Stone Age sequence, dated between 70,000 and 100,000 years old, were announced. Comparable geometric designs have been also observed on an engraved bone fragment from Blombo's cave. Hold on, Pete. Look, right here. Do this look like somebody who just doing some shit just to do some shit? If I will put my mind to the stars and wonder of what they was doing at this point in time, I believe that this was like something sort of a fragment of a calendar that they made. You get what I'm saying? This doesn't put you, if this is 100,000 years old, this means that these people at that point in time had knowledge of the seasons, they had knowledge of the stars, of the planets, they had knowledge of time. These people had knowledge of things that some people today don't even have knowledge of. And you saying that you know that, I just want you to understand that Egypt was not the first. We have to stop focusing on Egypt and focus on the entire Africa as a whole, people. Look at this. Beads. These people knew how to craft and carve beads to be able to make jewelry. The geometric design of their art. They knew about this, and this was 100,000 years old. Now, where was these things found at? If you know that, you know that part right there. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, though these things was found in South Africa, just like in my earlier slide, you got to understand that all of these places was surrounded by what river? The Zambia River. Where does the Zambia River lead you to? Central Africa. All of these tribes at that point in time had connection with each other. They was doing things with each other. You get what I'm saying? And if you know anything about migration and people migrating out of Africa, they just didn't go north to Egypt. Now, okay, now peep this out. The Loopmen is the name given by archaeologists to a Central African culture, which though once thought to date between 30 to 1200 BC, is now generally recognized to be far older. Dates of 300,000 have been obtained from twin rivers, Zambia and Maguric, Kenya, respectively. The industry is characterized by the occurrence of bifacially flaked lanceolate. I believe it's lanceolate or lanceolate or whatever points. It has been postulated that the Loopmen tools being generally distributed within the modern day Congo, excuse my language right now, forest belt may have been adapted to woodworking. Now, I mean, look at these tools. These are basically the same tools that you get from the other cave. They all connected to the same river. where does this river lead to? Central Africa, where they acknowledge that prehistoric people was dwelling in the rainforest, which we are going to do a lecture on, that's stating that this rainforest right there in the Congo was the cradle of civilization, where the African man started and where the world started and migrated out into the far points of the world. You get what I'm saying to you? Basically, if you have the same art form and the same tools in two different sites, one dating from 100,000 years ago, and you have the other tools being found in Central Africa dating at 300,000 years ago, and these tools both intertwined with each other, and the people that was using these tools was on the same riverbanks with each other, and you see a trail of archaeology and evidence that's proven that these people was thinking, and they had the area mapped out. They had civilization mapped out. You see nothing but drawings, things getting better as the time, moving from the Congo, going all the way down to Botswana, coming up to Uganda, going up to Egypt. These is the line of the people. Now, but this is only part one, people. So just stay tuned for part two, because it's damn sure more evidence coming up for you. Until then, man, peace to the guys and the goddess.